Now the second verse Now the second verse of the Yoga Sutra of Maharshi Patanjali, Yogas Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Let us see its meaning, its detail. Yoga is the cessation of movements in the consciousness. It is defined as restraint of fluctuations in the consciousness, and it is the art of studying the behavior of consciousness, which has three functions: cognition, volition, and motion. Yoga shows ways of understanding the functionings of the mind and helps to quieten their movements, leading one towards the undisturbed state of silence, which dwells in the very seat of consciousness. Thus, it is the art and the science of mental discipline through which the mind becomes cultured and matured. This vital sutra contains the definition of yoga, the control or restraint of the movement of consciousness leading to their complete cessation. Means we are sitting and then some wrong ideas are flowing into the head. But when we get still, we don't pay attention, then that will be evaporated out of your inside. Chitta is the vehicle which takes the mind or the manas towards the soul. By this control or restraint, it can happen, but this needs to be done with smile, with enthusiasm, and with happiness and right intent, not much negative force. So thus it is the cessation, the yoga is the cessation of all vibration in the seat of consciousness. It is extremely difficult to convey the meaning of the word chitta because it is the subtlest form of cosmic intelligence, Mahat. And Mahat is the great principle, the source of the material world of nature, as opposed to the soul, which is an offshoot of human nature. According to the Sankhya philosophy, creation is effected by the mingling of Prakriti with the Purush, the cosmic soul. This view of cosmology is also accepted by the Yoga philosophy. The principles of Purush and Prakriti are the source of all action, volition, and silence. Words such as Chitta, Buddhi, and Mahat, the cosmic intelligence, are so often used interchangeably that the student can easily become confused. One way to structure one's understanding is to remember that every phenomena which has reached its full evolution or individuation has a subtle or cosmic counterpart. Thus we translate Buddhi or the Bodh as the individual discriminating intelligence and consider Mahat to be its cosmic counterpart. Similarly, the individual consciousness Chitta is masked by its subtle form Chitta. For the purpose of self-realization, the highest awareness of consciousness and the most refined faculty of intelligence have to work so much in partnership that it is not always useful to split hairs by separating them. The thinking principle or conscience, Antahakarana, links the motivating principle of nature, the Mahat, to individual consciousness, which can be thought of as a fluid enveloping Ahankar, Buddhi, and Manas, that is, ego, intelligence, and mind. This fluid tends to become cloudy and opaque due to its contact with the external world via its three components. That sadhak's aim is to bring the consciousness to a state of purity and translucence. It is important to note that consciousness not only links evolved or manifest nature to non-evolved or subtle nature, it is also closest to the soul itself, which does not belong to any nature but is merely seeing the things happening. And then the buddhi possesses the decisive knowledge which is determined by perfect action and experience. The manas, the mind gathers and collects information through the five senses of perception, the jnanendriya, the five organs of action, karmendriya, the organs of perception and action. The cosmic intelligence, ego, individual intelligence, mind, the five senses of perception, and the five organs of action are the products of the five elements of nature: earth, water, fire, air, and ether. And with the infra-atomic qualities of smell, taste, form, sight, touch, and sound. So, in order to help a man to understand himself, the sages analyzed human being as composed of the five sheaths or the koshas: the annamaya, the anatomical, which is connected to the earth element, and the sayam. And then the pranayam, physiological aspect of the sheath, which is related to the water element and considered as the yoga anga niyama. And then the manomaya, or the mental sheath, which is related to the fire, and for that is asanas. And then the intellectual vijnanamaya, or the air, the pranayam. And then the blissful ether, or pratyahar anandamaya kosh. The annamaya, pranamaya, manomaya, anatomical, physiological, and the mental sheaths are within the elements of our nature, sattva, rajas, tamas. And the individual, intellectual sheath is said to be the layer of the individual soul or Atman. And for that is the practice of pranayam. And the blissful sheath, the layer of universal soul, Paramatman, for which the sky is the element. In effect, all the five sheaths have to be penetrated to reach emancipation. So, the practice of yoga integrates a person through the journey of intelligence consciousness from external to the internal, and unites him from the intelligence of the skin to the intelligence of the self, so that his self merges with the cosmic self and remains blissful always, all the time. So the yoga, the restraint of fluctuating thought, leads to a sattvic state, but in order to restrain the fluctuations, force of will is necessary. Hence the degree of rajas is involved in it. And the restraint of the movement of thought brings about a stillness which leads to the deep silence with awareness. So if you feel any problem, the restraint towards the negative tendencies can lead to the silence and then further utilization of the intelligence. Stillness is concentration, that is dharana, and silence is meditation, that is dhyana. The concentration needs a focus or a form, and this focus is ahankar, one's own small individual self. And when the concentration flows into meditation, that self loses its identity and becomes one with the great self. Like the two sides of a coin, the ego and the atma, ahankar and the soul, are the two opposite poles living in man. The sadhak is influenced by the self on the one hand and by objects perceived on the other. When he is engrossed in the object, his mind fluctuates. This is vritti, and that is why here he said, Patanjali said, yoga chitta vritti nirodha, negative tendencies needs to be curbed. So human aim should be to distinguish the self from the object seen so that it doesn't become enmeshed by them, and through yoga he should try to free his consciousness from the temptations of such objects and bring it closer to the seer, one who is watching, and then the negative tendencies can go. Restraining the fluctuations of the mind is a process which leads to an end, that is samadhi, where the soul is integrated with the Supreme Soul. When the sadhak has attained a total state of restraint, yogic discipline is accomplished and the end is reached, the consciousness remains pure, and thus yoga is both the means as well as the end. Here ends the meaning of the Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. You can contemplate on it. This much in this video. Thanks for listening and watching.